Hi guys, tonight we begin not in a castle but in the cramped smoke-hazed dressing room of a Victorian music hall. The gas jets hiss overhead and you can almost smell the cheap perfume, the greasy cold cream and the nervous sweat of 24 girls all painting on the same face. It's the kind of scene that looks all glitter and glamour from the plush seats out front. But if you had to actually live this life, to earn your bread in this light, you'd understand quickly that the real performance didn't start when the curtain rose. It started hours before, in the quiet terror of the mirror. The reality is simple. This world sold fantasy, but it ran on a brutal calculus. And if you had to survive in it without security, without safety nets, or even a shred of society's respect, you'd discover quickly that your biggest enemy wasn't poverty, or even the men in the crowd. It was the relentless ticking clock of your own youth. You probably wouldn't last a year. At least, not without learning a ruthless set of rules. So before we step into the glare of the footlights, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you're genuinely drawn to these raw, human stories from the shadows of history. And if you're listening right now, post your location and the local time in the comments. I love seeing the map of where in the world people are gathering for this journey into the forgotten corners of the past. The light in the room is failing, that thin, exhausted grey particular to cities where the sun gives up early, defeated by smoke and soot. Your day, what little there was of it between the late rise and this impending transformation, is over. The ritual begins not with addition, but with removal. You sit before a small, wavy mirror propped on a crates, a bowl of tepid water and a coarse cloth beside it. The face you wash is not the one the night will see. You scrub at the faint, honest grime of the city, the residue of a quick errand to the chandler's, the dust that settles on everything in this neighbourhood. The water turns cloudy. You dry your skin and it feels bare, vulnerable, a blank page. Now, you begin to write the night's fiction upon it. Your hands move with a practised, weary efficiency. The first pot holds the ceruse, the white lead paste. You scoop a little onto your fingers. It is cool and dense with a peculiar sweet metallic smell that promises beauty and sickness in the same breath. You smooth it over your face, your neck, the tops of your shoulders. It stings faintly on the raw skin near your hairline, a minor sacrifice. The paste dries to a mask, poreless and stark, erasing shadows, fatigue, the faint traces of yesterday's application. In this light, you're already a ghost. Next comes the carmine for the cheeks, dug from a tiny tin. You pinch your cheeks to find the bone, then dab the bright red onto the apples, blending it out towards the white. It is the blush of perfect health, a lie painted over the pallor of late nights and questionable food. The eyebrows come last, with a stick of coal. You lean close to the mirror, your breath fogging the glass, and carefully draw two dark, arched lines. They are not your brows. They are statements, signals of attention meant to be read from the back of a hall. The final touch is a beeswax and coal dust mixture for the lashes. You smell the lamp soot as you apply it. The face in the mirror is complete. It is bright, exaggerated, designed for distance and gaslight. It is a face of business. Your own eyes looking out from within this painted shell seem smaller, more watchful. You stand, and the second phase begins. You step out of the simple worn cotton shift you wear during the day. It smells of cheap soap and your own skin. From a hook on the back of the door you lift the costume. It is infinitely more vivid and infinitely less real. The fabric is a cheap satin, dyed a violent pink or blue, already fraying at the seams where it has been hastily let out or taken in for different girls. It feels slick and slightly cold against your skin. The ribbons are a little tarnished, the sequins sewn on with thread that threatens to snap. You fasten the hooks at the back, a contortion you have mastered. Then the corset, pulled tighter than for daytime, not for fashion but for silhouette, creating a shape that is all urgent curves and cinched waist, a shape that sells. You can breathe, but only in short, careful sips. Finally, you place the feathered headpiece or the spangled hairnet. It is garish, glorious, and weighs almost nothing. You're now assembled. The woman in the day dress is gone, packed away like the simple cloth folded on the stool. In her place stands a creature of light and shimmer, a confection ready for consumption. The distance between the two, measured in the few feet from the wash basin to the centre of the room, feels like the width of an ocean. You blow out the candle, pull a plain, dark shawl over the glitter, and step into the corridor, locking your door behind you. The journey to the hall is a transition through layers of judgment. You move quickly, head slightly down, but you feel the eyes. The landlady peering from her parlour gives a look that is both disapproving and calculating, knowing your rent is paid from this. A group of boys on the corner stop their roughhousing to stare, their mouths agape at the glimpse of spangles beneath your shawl. A respectable clerk walking with his wife quickens his pace, steering her away as if you emitted a miasma. Their gaze is one of clean, cold contempt. Then there are the other looks, from men leaning in doorways or rolling by in cabs. These are slower, appraising, a visual inventory taken from a distance. They do not see you. They see the suggestion of the costume, the painted face. Their looks are sticky, like cobwebs you have to walk through. You pull the shawl tighter, a futile armour. You're not walking to work. You're being processed by the city, categorised and filed away under theatrical or worse. You arrive not at the grand gaslit entrance with its billboards and milling crowd, but at a narrow, unmarked door down a dank alley that runs alongside the music hall. This is the tradesman's entrance, the artery for the machinery of illusion. The smell here is different. Damp brick, rotting wood, and the faint, sweet, sour odour of the garbage bins. You knock, a specific pattern. A slot slides open, an eye appears, and the door unlocks from within. You slip inside into a dim, bustling underworld. The door thuds shut behind you, cutting off the alley and the judging eyes of the street. But you have not escaped scrutiny. You have merely changed its nature. Here you are assessed by the stage manager for punctuality, by the other girls for the state of your costume and your potential to draw attention, by the leering scene shifters. You have passed from the indifferent harshness of the public street into the focused, competitive scrutiny of the marketplace. You hang your shawl on a crowded hook, its rough wool utterly foreign among the tulle and satin. The final transformation is complete. The girl from the rented room is gone. Only the product remains, waiting for the curtain to rise and the valuation to begin. You're not selling a song, a dance, a joke. You're selling a carefully calibrated fantasy of accessibility. You offer the glow of health in a consumptive age, a smile that promises companionship without the burden of a full person behind it, a touch of the risque that makes a man feel daring but not criminal. In the great grimy engine of Victorian consumerism, you are the most perishable item on display. Fresh tonight, slightly faded tomorrow, and always, always racing against the clock. The backstage world you enter is not a sanctuary, but a factory floor for the manufacturing of charm. The air hits you first, a thick, palpable stew of competing scents that hangs in the damp heat. It smells of violet powder struggling to mask the tang of nervous sweat, of hot metal from the gas pipes overhead, of greasy cold cream, of the faint ever-present mildew from the damp brick walls. And underneath it all, the animal scent of too many bodies in too small a space. The room is long and low-ceilinged, lit by a few harsh gas jets that cast more shadow than light, creating pockets of glaring brightness and deep gloom. Along the walls are mirrors framed by naked bulbs, each reflecting a sliver of the same painted face in various stages of assembly. The sound is a constant low-level hum of industry. The rustle of taffeta and tulle, the snap of a garter, the hiss of a curling iron on a spirit lamp, the muttered curses when a hook breaks or a seam pops. This is where the collective labour happens. You find a sliver of space at a shared dressing table, your elbows brushing against the girl on either side. No one has the luxury of solitude. A request is breathed into the smoky air. Lily, a pull? You turn and the girl behind you, already laced, presents her back. You plant a foot on the wooden frame of her chair, grasp the corset strings with both hands, and pull with all your strength, a practiced, brutal motion. She lets out a sharp gasp, then a controlled exhale as her waist disappears into the impossible hourglass the costume demands. She will do the same for you in a moment. It is a compact of mutual survival, this redistribution of breath. Pots of rouge and sticks of coal are passed down the line without a word, a shared economy of colour. A girl with a steadier hand might lean over to fix another's smudged eyeliner. There is a wordless, efficient kindness in these transactions, a recognition that you are all components in the same machine, and if one part fails, it reflects poorly on the whole line. The talk that weaves through this mechanical intimacy is of a starkly different world. It is not of art or applause, but of material arithmetic. "My landlady's like a hawk," a voice murmurs from the corner. "Said if I'm a shilling short again this week, my trunk will be on the pavement by Monday." Another voice, younger, tinged with a mix of pride and anxiety, replies, "See if you can get a bottle of the cheap scent from the cart on Drury Lane. A dab behind the ears before you talk to her. Sometimes it softens the look of the figures." Elsewhere, the calculus is more direct. "Did you see him last night? The one in the third row with the watch chain?" "The stout one. He bought 3 rounds for the box. Not just drinks, sent a note back with a florin tucked in it, just to say he admired my smile." The statement hangs in the air, evaluated. A florin is a significant token. It represents a potential patron, but also a risk. Is he generous, or does he expect a pound of flesh for his pound? The other girls offer no congratulations, only a measured, silent assessment. They're tallying her potential earnings against their own, calculating if his attention might be drawn away from them, or if his presence in the crowd might lift the general mood and loosen more pockets. The talk is also of losses. Maggie's out. The cough came back blood this time. A collective grim silence follows. It is not just sympathy, it is a reminder of the ledger. Illness is a debit that can wipe out a year's careful savings in a fortnight. The debt to the chemist, the lost wages, the inevitable decline in your freshness. It is a spiral they have all seen and fear. Amidst this, there exists a brittle, precious camaraderie. A girl might share a scrap of newspaper to line a boot with a hole in the sole. Another might offer a sip of her illicit watered gin in a teacup before the show, a nerve-steadying ritual. They complain about the same stage manager, warn each other about a customer in the front row with wandering hands, share a laugh at the absurdity of a particularly awful costume. In these moments, they are not rivals, but comrades in a bewildering siege. Yet the solidarity has clear, invisible walls. You do not share the name of your truly generous admirer if you have one. You do not reveal the exact state of your savings or your most cherished escape plan. That is proprietary information. The friendship here is real, but it is the friendship of soldiers in a trench, deeply felt in the moment, yet always conditional on the shared, ongoing emergency. You're all on the same production line, painting on the same smiles, tightening the same corsets, selling fragments of the same dream. You work in unison, but you're paid, judged, and discarded as individuals. The factory produces a uniform product, but it consumes each unique girl, one exhausted, smiling night at a time. The call from the stage manager echoes down the passage, a rough bark cutting through the feminine murmur. "Ladies, 5 minutes." The shared pot of rouge is snapped shut. One last critical glance is exchanged in the mirror. A feather is tweaked, a smile is practiced, not too wide, not too timid, just bright enough to be bought from the back row. The factory's shift bell has rung. The products are finished for now. They line up in the dark wing, a row of glittering silhouettes, their breathing shallow in their tightened cages, their painted faces fixed in identical anticipation, waiting for the curtain to rise and the real transaction to begin. This is why the other economy, the shadow economy of the night, is not supplementary. It is essential. It is the difference between fading and surviving, between a room in a decent lodging house and a bunk in a common doss house. This income arrives not in an envelope, but in fragments, each one carrying its own weight of implication. A waiter might appear in the wings during a performance, a silver sixpence or a shilling on his small tray, with a nod towards a gentleman in the third row. The coin is warm from the server's hand. You take it with a murmured thanks, a quick professional smile towards the darkness where your benefactor sits. This is clean as these things go. Distance is maintained. More complex is the invitation delivered by the same waiter. The gentleman in box B requests the pleasure of your company for a glass of wine during the interval. This is a contract with unwritten terms. To refuse is to risk offending a regular, a man whose custom, both at the bar and in these small tributes, might be worth pounds over a season. To accept is to step onto a narrow and greasy ledge. You go, of course. You sit in the plush dimness of the box, the noise of the hall swelling below. The gentleman is often alone, sometimes with a companion. He pours you a glass of something sweet. The conversation is minuet. He will compliment your performance, your smile, the colour of your hair. You will thank him demurely. He will talk of business or travel, displaying his worldliness. You will listen, an expression of fascinated interest fixed on your face. The whole exchange is a performance more delicate than any on the stage. He's assessing his investment. You're gauging his intentions. Is he merely purchasing the illusion of companionship for the evening, a pretty face to adorn his box? Or is there a harder, more specific expectation growing behind his eyes? The glass of wine is a timer. When it is empty, the meeting typically ends. He may press a coin into your hand, a half-crown, even a half-sovereign if he's particularly pleased. This is the prize. But the touch of his hand lingering a moment too long, the possessive glance, the hint of a further meeting in more comfortable surroundings. This is the risk. This grey market income is your lifeline, but it is a rope that can suddenly turn into a noose. Every coin from the shadows comes with a question attached. What, precisely, did he buy? And then there are the costs they never see. The silent taxes levied on your very body. Your wage does not cover the tools of your trade. It merely allows you to finance them yourself, a brutal form of piecework. The costume provided by the management is a base model, a drab, ill-fitting thing. To stand out, to catch the eye of that gentleman in box B, you must enhance it. You spend precious shillings on ribbons, on faux jewels to stitch to the bodice, on a better quality feather for your hair that won't droop under the heat of the lights. You buy your own silk stockings, for the ladders in the cheap ones are a catastrophe. Gloves, if your number requires them, must be white and spotless, another recurring cost. The makeup is a constant drain. The ceruse, the rouge, the kohl, they're consumed, pot by pot, stick by stick. You learn which cheap brands irritate the skin less, but even they cost. Your hair must be washed, curled, pinned. But the most terrifying investment is in your physical capital. A cough that lingers must be treated with a costly syrup. A bad tooth is not just pain, it is an existential threat. You remember Sarah, who danced 2 lines over from you. She had a sweet smile until she took a knock from an elbow during a hectic scene change and chipped her front tooth. It was a small flaw, barely noticeable in speech, but under the gaslights when she smiled it caught the light wrong. A tiny, dark aberration in the perfect white crescent. The notes from the gentleman dwindled. The stage manager began to place her further back in the formation. Within a month, she was gone, replaced by a girl with an intact, gleaming smile. The lesson was etched in fear. Your face, your teeth, your body are not yours. They are the machinery of your livelihood, and they require constant, expensive maintenance. A single failure in the apparatus, a missing tooth, a persistent skin rash from bad paint, an injury that alters your gait, can depreciate your value overnight. You're a small business owner whose entire inventory is yourself, living in perpetual terror of a crash in the market or a flaw in the sole product you have to sell. The applause that echoes in the hall is not for you. It is for the temporary glittering fiction you have gone into debt to create. When the last curtain falls, you are left alone with the ledger, counting the night's fragile gains against the relentless draining costs of simply remaining visible and saleable for one more week. The final curtain call is not an ending, but an intermission in a longer, less scripted performance. The roar of the crowd muffles as the heavy velvet drape swings shut, cutting you off from the light. In the sudden dimness of the wings, the collective smile you've held for 2 hours dissolves instantly from your face, leaving the muscles aching and slack. There is no time to rest. The transition is swift and practiced. You do not return to the crowded, gossipy dressing room. Instead, you slip into a smaller, quieter anteroom, a transitional space. Here you shed the glittering armour of the stage. The gaudy satin costume, damp with perspiration under the arms and at the small of your back, is unfastened and laid aside. It will be collected, brushed and hung for tomorrow's illusion. From a hook you retrieve your other uniform. This dress is of finer material than your daywear, a wool crepe perhaps, or a dark silk, but its purpose is just as specific. It is cut to be flattering, hinting at the figure the corset still defines, but it covers the shoulders and arms, presenting a picture of semi-respectability. The colours are muted, deep burgundy, navy, forest green. It says lady, but a lady with a certain awareness, a lady who understands the soft light of a gas lamp and the importance of a well-turned ankle glimpsed beneath a hem. You repair your makeup, not for distance now, but for proximity. You soften the harsh lines, powder away the shine of exertion, reapply the rouge with a lighter hand. You remove the towering headpiece, letting your hair fall into a more natural, though still artfully arranged, style. You're making yourself legible in a different language. You're translating the bold, public lift of the stage girl into the more nuanced, private script of the companion. You check your reflection one last time. The woman in the glass is familiar, yet distinct. She's quieter, more approachable than her stage sister, but the brightness in her eyes is not warmth. It is vigilance. You take a deep, steadying breath that is half swallowed by the corset, and then you turn. You do not go back into the auditorium the way you came. You exit through a different door, one that leads not to the alley, but to a carpeted corridor that smells of cigar smoke and spilled whiskey. This is the passage used by the box holders and the better class of patron. Your heels make no sound on the thick runner. The door at the end opens directly into the swirling, smoke-hazed world of the music hall's attached bar. The sensory shift is profound, but of a different order than the stage. The heat here is moist, breath-borne, not the dry blast of the footlights. The light is golden and diffuse, pulled in lamps on tables glinting off the brass of the bar, leaving corners in conspiratorial shadow. The air is thick with the smells of ale, gin, tobacco, and the faint, greasy aroma of hot meat pies. The sound is a deep, masculine rumble of conversation and laughter, a current you must now navigate alone, not as part of a synchronized line. You pause for a moment on the threshold, your eyes adjusting. You're no longer a singular point of focus on a lit platform. You're one moving part in a complex social machine. You're scanned, assessed and categorized by the glances that flicker your way from the crowded tables in the bar. A nod from the head waiter, a man who knows your face and your value to the house's liquor sales, grants you a subtle entry. You find a space to stand where you are visible but not obvious, near the wall but not cornered. This is your new stage. The offer of a drink is never a question of thirst. It is the first move in a ritual as formal as any dance. A waiter approaches, not with a tray from the bar, but with a specific message. Miss, the gentleman by the fireplace wishes to know if you would take a glass of champagne with him. To refuse without cause is bad business. It insults the gentleman, annoys the waiter who loses his commission, and marks you as difficult or aloof, a reputation that dries up invitations. You accept. You follow the waiter through the crowd. The gentleman rises as you approach, a gesture of courtesy that is also a display of possession, showing the room that you are his guest. He pulls out a chair for you. You sit, arranging your skirts, offering the same smile you practiced in the anteroom mirror, softer than the stage smile, but no less deliberate. The first blast of heat and light from the open stage is a physical shock, like stepping from a cellar into a forge. The gas footlights and wing lamps don't illuminate, they assault. They bleach colour, flatten depth, and cast sharp, unforgiving shadows upwards. In this glare, your face is not a window to a soul, but a signalling device. Your smile is its primary flag. You've learned it is not an expression of feeling, but a precise muscular configuration. The corners of your lips must be pulled back and up with enough tension to carve distinct lines in the thick white paste on your cheeks, lines visible to the gentleman in the last row of the gallery who's had 5 pints and sees everything through a haze. Your teeth must be shown, a flash of manufactured health against the red of your lips, but not too many teeth. That veers into a grimace or the leer of a pantomime dame. The eyes must participate, crinkling slightly at the corners. Though you must fight the instinct to squint against the blinding lights, you hold this arrangement. Through the opening chorus, through the verses of a song you've sung 300 times, through the mechanical precision of your steps, the muscles in your cheeks begin to tremble with a low, burning fatigue. A tiny tic might develop near your left eye. The smile becomes a weight you're lifting, ounce by ounce, minute by minute. When the number ends and the curtain swings shut, the release of that tension is a physical pain, a soreness that will linger for hours, a stiffness that feels like you've been struck. You rub your jaw covertly in the wings, the paint smudging under your fingertips, and the relief is so profound it is almost pleasurable. Then you hear your cue for the next number. You take a breath and you walk back into the light, the smile snapping back onto your face like a well-oiled trapdoor closing. Your body moves not to music, but against it, using it as a metronome for a series of prescribed actions. This is not dance as an art of expression, it is dance as a geometry of suggestion. Every motion is engineered for maximum optical effect from a specific angle, the front and the cheap seats to the sides. The choreography is simple, repetitive, designed to be learned quickly by a changing roster of girls and executed perfectly even when half exhausted or slightly unwell. The kick is its cornerstone. You don't kick high like a French can-can dancer. That is too vulgar, too direct. You kick to a precise height, just high enough to give the gentleman in the stalls a thrilling, fleeting glimpse of a silk-stockinged ankle and a froth of petticoat, but not so high as to show the knee and cross the line into outright indecency. The skill lies in the uniformity. 20 girls must kick as one, a rippling wave of limbs, the asterisk swish thump asterisk of 20 heels hitting the stage in near perfect unison. The sound is part of the cell, a display of discipline, of a collective body under control. The skirts are your partners in this deception. They're weighted at the hems, just so. A turn is executed with a specific flick of the hip to make the skirt flare out in a perfect bell-shaped circle. It is a calculated release of energy, a blooming of colour and fabric that says youth and vitality before settling back into the demure lines of the formation. Your arms are held in graceful rounded positions, not because it is beautiful, but because it frames the face and the bodice. The entire routine is a study in controlled revelation and swift concealment, a commodity teasing its own packaging. Your back aches from the posture, your legs burn from the sustained bouncy steps on the hard boards, your feet swell in the tight cheap shoes. You're not performing joy, you're performing the asterisk, symptom asterisk of joy, using your aching body as the tool to create an image of effortless, purchasable delight. All the while, behind the fixed smile and within the mechanics of the dance, your eyes are performing their own frantic, silent ballet. The lights make the audience a dark, murmuring sea, but you have learned to navigate its currents. Your gaze sweeps across the blur of faces without ever truly focusing, a scanning mechanism. You're looking for patterns, for breaks in the rhythm of passive watching. A man leaning forward, his eyes following you specifically, not the general spectacle. A hand raised, not in applause, but to signal a waiter, a man ordering another drink, a man in a spending mood, a glint of gold or silver as a coin is played with on a tabletop. These are the potential benefactors, the ones who might later send a compliment and a shilling backstage. Simultaneously, you're watching for storm clouds, the drunk who is not jovial but belligerent, whose shouts are beginning to slur into aggression rather than approval. The group of young bucks in a box egging each other on, their laughter too sharp, their gestures too broad. A fight rarely starts on stage. It brews in the audience and boils over. You learn to see the steam rising. Your positioning on stage is not just about the choreography, it is about logistics. You subtly maneuver to keep the most volatile sections of the crowd in your peripheral vision, or to place a taller girl between you and them. You note the location of the house constable, a bulky shadow by the curtains. Your performance is a dual-track operation, the bright public track of song and step, and the dark private track of surveillance and risk assessment. A genuine performer loses themselves in the role. You cannot afford to. You're a sentry in sequins, a smile on your face, and a running calculation in your head, measuring the distance to the wings, the mood of the crowd, the weight of the coins in tonight's potential, and the heavy enduring price of the smile you must hold until the curtain falls. The envelope you receive each Saturday afternoon feels treacherously thin. You take it from the stage manager's hand, your fingers knowing its weight before you even slip it into your pocket. It is your weekly stipend, the foundational layer of your existence, and it is engineered for insufficiency. As a chorus girl, you are not paid for talent or hours, but for your presence as a living part of the scenery. The sum inside might be 15 shillings, perhaps £1 if the hall is prosperous, and you are considered reliable. You retreat to a corner to count it, the coins cold and familiar. You immediately begin the silent, desperate arithmetic. 5 shillings for the rent of your single, fireless room, a non-negotiable debit that stares back at you with the landlady's flinty eyes. Another 3 or 4 for the bare necessities, coal for the tiny grate, candles, a meagre diet of bread, potatoes, a scrap of cheese, the occasional bit of bacon for strength. A penny for the bathhouse, a luxury you force yourself to afford once a week, for cleanliness is part of the product. Already the envelope is half gutted. What remains must stretch to cover the world. There is no line item for a new pair of boots when the soles wear through, or for a warm cloak against the winter river fog, or for a doctor if a cough takes hold. The weekly wage is a leash, just long enough to keep you from outright starvation and homelessness, but perpetually short, yanking you back to the edge of necessity. It grants you life, but no life at all. It is the economic expression of your replaceability. There is always another girl from the provinces or the slums willing to step into your shoes for the same pittance. Your salary does not pay you to live. It pays you to remain available for work. The glass placed before you, beaded with condensation, is not a refreshment. It is a contract. Its very presence means you are now, officially, on the clock in a more intimate and uncertain capacity. The first sip is a formality, cold and sharp on your tired throat. As you set the glass down, the true work begins. The performance now is entirely conversational, a duet without music. You're no longer singing lines written by a hack songwriter. You're improvising a role where the script is the gentleman's ego, and your objective is to keep the dialogue and the potential for further remuneration flowing as smoothly as the champagne in your glass. The stage was about projection. The bar is about absorption. You listen, you nod, you laugh lightly at the appropriate moments. You've become a companion for hire, a temporary charming listener, and the currency of this transaction is your attention, measured out in the slow emptying of your glass and the careful maintenance of your smile. The footlights have been replaced by the glow of a single lamp on a marble-top table, and the stakes, in their way, have never been higher. The glass in your hand is a prop, and the conversation that follows is a scene you have rehearsed in 100 variations. The man across from you has purchased your company, and now you must deliver its convincing illusion. His occupation, his manner, even the cut of his coat, inform your opening lines. With the clerk neat and anxious to appear more than he is, you speak of the rising cost of living, a safe, unifying grievance. A pound of butter seems to become dearer every Monday, you might sigh, offering a commiserating smile. This is not a political statement. It is a human one, a shared shake of the head at life's petty tyrannies. It makes you seem practical, grounded, a girl who understands the value of a shilling. With the shopkeeper, more confident in his means, you might admire his watch chain or the quality of his hat left on the chair. You have an eye for detail, I can tell. It flatters his discernment, his success. With the occasional gentleman whose accent and bearing mark him as from a different world, you are more circumspect. You might comment on the performance, asking his opinion, casting yourself as an eager student of the arts, acknowledging his presumed superior taste. Politics, religion, the harsh specifics of your own life, these are forbidden continents. You navigate a narrow channel of acceptable topics, the weather, the dreadful state of the omnibuses, a new play everyone is talking about, the amusing habits of a popular stage comedian. You offer opinions that are just sharp enough to seem witty but never controversial. You're building a portrait of a charming, unthreatening, pleasantly stimulating companion. Listening is your primary art, and you perform it with your whole body. Your eyes remain on his face, not with a fixed stare, but with a soft, attentive focus. You nod at the pauses, a slight, encouraging tilt of the head. When he makes a point he thinks is clever, your laugh is ready. Not a booming stage laugh, but a light, genuine-sounding chuckle that rises just enough to reward him. You learn to ask the questions that allow him to hold forth. And how did you find your way into that line of business? Or, that sounds a most ingenious scheme. You're not truly interested in the intricacies of dry goods wholesale or the merits of a new accounting system. But you fashion your face into a mask of fascination. You sip your champagne slowly, making it last, your attention never wavering from his narrative. You become a mirror, reflecting back to him a brighter, wittier, more admired version of himself. In these moments, you erase your own tiredness, your own calculations, and become a vessel for his vanity. The skill lies in making the reflection feel true, not servile. You're not a sycophant, you're a discerning admirer, and the distinction, though wafer-thin, is everything. The flattery must be woven in like gold thread in a dark fabric, subtle but illuminating. It cannot be crude. You do not say, "You're rich," or "You're handsome." You say, "You have a very direct way of seeing things. I admire that." Or, "It's refreshing to speak with someone who has travelled so in his mind." For the clerk, you might say, "You carry yourself with such purpose, one would think you managed the entire concern." You compliment his mind, his energy, his perception, attributes he can believe he owns, regardless of his actual station. The flattery is an investment. It puts him at ease, oils the gears of his self-regard, and makes him more generous, more willing to extend the encounter. He begins to feel that the connection is unique, that you see something in him the drab world misses. This feeling is the product you're truly selling, and all the while, you're guiding the transaction towards its next fruitful stage. You never ask for another drink. Instead, you perform a tiny, calculated sequence. As your glass reaches its final quarter, your animation might dim just perceptibly, a shadow of lovely melancholy crossing your features. You might glance at the glass, then back at him with a small, resigned but brave smile, as if acknowledging the inevitable end of a delightful interlude. A good patron, one who wishes to sustain the pleasant fiction he is enjoying, will often rise to the cue. "Waiter, another glass for the lady." It is a triumph of suggestion. Alternatively, if the conversation has been particularly lively, you might say, as the waiter passes, "Oh, I should not keep you any longer from your friends," while making no move to rise. This presents him with a chivalrous challenge. To insist you are no trouble, that he is enjoying himself immensely. It reinforces his sense of control and generosity. The ultimate goal beyond the second glass is the "remember me." This is not said aloud. It is achieved through the cumulative effect of the hour. You must become a distinct, pleasant memory in an evening of blurry impressions. You might let slip a small personal detail, a fondness for a particular type of chocolate, a longing to see the sea, something harmless, endearing. Later, as the encounter naturally concludes, you offer your hand. "It has been a genuine pleasure, Mr. Smith." You use the name he gave you. You look him directly in the eye, allowing the professional warmth in your gaze to linger for 1/2 second longer than strictly necessary. "I do hope you enjoy the rest of your evening." The message is encoded in the pause, in the slight pressure of your fingers. Asterisk. Remember this. Remember me. You're placing a bookmark in his evening, a mental note that might translate next Saturday into a specific request for your company, a preemptive note with a coin, a nod of recognition that sets you apart from the chorus line. You rise, the faint rustle of your skirts a final punctuation. You smile, turn and walk away, feeling his eyes on your back, hoping you have deposited just enough charm in his mind to yield interest later. The conversation is over, but its account remains open, its balance pending. You glide back towards the bar, your face already composing itself for the next introduction, the next delicate, profit-bearing negotiation in the golden, smoky gloom. But the golden haze of the bar is not a protection. It is a filter that makes certain dangers more visible, others more hidden. The most immediate threat is as physical as a shove. The alcohol that loosens purse strings also loosens inhibitions and tempers. A hand, meant to gesture, lands heavily on your shoulder and stays there, its grip too familiar. A compliment about your smile curdles into something lewd whispered too close to your ear, the words hot and slurred. This is not courtship. It is a territorial claim testing the boundaries of your tolerance. You have a repertoire of deflections, a light practice step sideways that removes the hand without appearing to snub, a turned shoulder and a redirecting of the conversation as if you simply didn't hear the crude remark, a polite but firm, "I beg your pardon, sir," delivered with a coolness that does not match your smile. The house constable, a bulky man in slightly shabby evening clothes, is a presence, but his protection is pragmatic, not chivalrous. He will intervene if a scene threatens to erupt into a brawl that disturbs other paying customers or risks damage to the fixtures. He is less concerned with a girl's discomfort than with the hall's peace. His gaze meets yours across the room sometimes, a silent inquiry. A slight shake of your head means you can handle it. A certain look of urgency might bring him over to clap the offender on the back with a force that is just shy of violence, steering him firmly towards the door. But the constable cannot be everywhere. In the dim corners, in the press of the crowd leaving, the risk sharpens. A pinching grip on your arm, a sudden stumble shoved against you. You learn to move with a kind of peripheral awareness, keeping tables between you and the most volatile patrons, your exit routes always mentally mapped. The violence is not constant, but its possibility is a chill in the air, a note that plays beneath the laughter and clinking glass, reminding you that your safety is a conditional clause in the evening's contract. Far more insidious is the quieter, more profound danger that comes not with a slur, but with a smile. It is the proposition that is never spoken outright, but laid out in the subtext of a conversation like a trapdoor covered by a fine rug. A gentleman, after a second bottle of champagne, might sigh about the loneliness of his hotel suite. Another might mention a friend who keeps a cosy little set of rooms for private suppers. Their eyes hold not lust, but a cool transactional curiosity. They are not asking. They are presenting a price list for a different tier of service. This is the moral cliff. Your response in this moment is a high-stakes calculation with your entire future on the scales. A flat, offended refusal brands you as a prude or a fool. It guarantees that this particular source of income, perhaps a significant one, dries up instantly. Worse, if the gentleman is a known high spender, word of your difficult nature might find its way to the stage manager, who values a girl who encourages the patronage of such men. A veiled warning about being a team player might follow. Yet to accept, even tacitly with a lowered gaze or a non-committal smile, is to step onto a grease slope. It begins with supper. Then it is a carriage ride. Then it is the rooms. Each step makes the next easier to take and impossible to retreat from. You would exchange the precarious visible marketplace of the bar for a hidden, wholly owned contract. The money would be better, more reliable, but the cost is your remaining shred of professional ambiguity, the fragile fiction that you're an entertainer, not a courtesan. It is the line between being a girl from the halls and a kept woman, a distinction the world outside draws in unforgiving ink. You weigh the terror of next week's rent against the terror of social annihilation. You measure the gentleman's potential for ongoing generosity against the certainty of being forever stained in the eyes of your few respectable connections, even in the wary eyes of the other girls. This calculation, silent and terrible, is the true work of the night, performed behind a mask of pleasant attention, and you are never alone in this calculation. The other women in the room, your fellow chorus girls, the more established soloists, the hardened barmaids who have seen it all, are your jury. Their eyes are upon you, taking note. They see which gentleman you're with, how long you stay, the expression on your face when you return to the bar alone. Their judgment is swift and forms the unspoken law of this place. If you're seen too often, too willingly, with men known to make such arrangements, a subtle distance grows. The shared pots of rouge might not come your way as readily. The warnings about a particular brute might not be passed along. You're marked as playing a different, darker game, and while they might pity you, they also ostracize you, for your choices reflect on them all and remind them of the abyss they skirt. Conversely, if you handle a delicate situation with particular skill, deflecting the advance while keeping the gentleman smiling and spending, you might earn a nod of respect, a piece of solid advice later. They're a sisterhood, but a sisterhood under siege, and their loyalty is conditional on adherence to the shared desperate code of survival. You must walk the line, but you must be seen to be walking it with intention, not stumbling blindly or worse, leaping off with open arms. Their collective gaze is a mirror held up to your choices, a constant, silent pressure to maintain the fragile, necessary illusion that what happens in the bar is merely an extension of the stage, a performance of companionship, and not the stark commodity trade it perpetually threatens to become. In their eyes you read your own reflection, and you understand that in this world your reputation is not just what men say about you, but what the women who share your precarious ledge know to be true. The final bell of the public house, ringing out its last call, is your signal for release. The collective energy of the bar, that thick soup of noise and negotiation, begins to dissipate around you. Men gather hats and canes, their voices booming with final liquor-fueled pronouncements. The waiters move with a new urgency, clearing glasses. You finish your own conversation, offering a final practice smile and a murmured goodnight to whichever gentleman has been your anchor for the last hour. You collect your dark shawl from the hook near the service door, its coarse wool a familiar touch. Wrapping it tightly around your shoulders, you pull it up to cover the fine fabric of your dress, the feathers in your hair. The transformation is immediate. From a creature of the lamplight, you become a shadow among shadows, a woman trying to pass unseen through the city's final, dangerous hour. The walk home is a journey through a different London. The gas lamps, their mantles burning lower now, cast long, wavering pools of jaundiced light between vast continents of darkness. The crowds are gone. The streets belong to the night soil men with their carts, to stray cats, to the occasional staggering figure singing a mournful tune to himself. Your footsteps, quick and light, seem too loud on the cobbles. Every doorway holds a potential threat. Every alley mouth is a moor. You might walk with another girl if your paths align, a silent pact of mutual vigilance. You say little. There's a shared understanding that the energy for talk has been spent. You simply move, your ears straining for footsteps behind you, your eyes scanning the gloom ahead. The cold, which was kept at bay by the press of bodies in the hall and the bar, now seeps through your shawl and dress, a sharp, clean contrast to the stale warmth you've left behind. You cross the river, perhaps, and the fog hangs thicker here, smelling of mud and decay, muffling sound until your own breathing seems intrusive. You finally reach your street, your building. The key is cold in your hand. You let yourself in, the click of the lock behind you a sound of profound, if temporary, safety. Inside your room, the silence is absolute and heavy. It presses on your ears, still ringing faintly from the night's din. You do not light the lamp immediately. You stand for a moment in the dark, allowing the persona of the evening to slough away in the familiar blackness. Then, with a sigh that comes from your bones, you strike a match. The small flame leaps and you touch it to the wick of your oil lamp. The room swims into view. The narrow bed, the washstand, the single chair, your other dress hanging on a peg. It is a cell, but it is yours. You lay your shawl aside. Now begins the nightly dismantling. You unpin the feathers, the hair pieces, letting your own hair, tight and aching from its pins, fall loose. You unhook the good dress, stepping out of it with care, hanging it up to air. Underneath, the corset remains, its rigid embrace a final cage to be unlocked. You turn your back to the small mirror, your fingers working at the hooks and eyes with a tired dexterity. The laces loosen. You draw a deep, shuddering breath as the pressure releases, the first full inhalation in hours. It feels like being born anew, but into a body that is sore and spent. Now you turn to the washstand. The water in the pitcher is cold, but that is what you need. You pour a little into the bowl, then take up the rag and the block of coarse yellow soap. This is the most important ritual of all, the unmasking. You wet the cloth and begin to scrub. The cold water is a shock. You work at the carmine on your cheeks first. It stains the cloth a sickly pink. Then the coal around your eyes, which smears into dark ghosts before succumbing. Finally, the white lead. This is the hardest. The paste has dried and settled into the fine lines around your eyes and mouth. You scrub gently, but the cheap ceruse seems to grip your skin. A burning sensation starts, a faint hot prickle on your cheeks and forehead, where the skin is most delicate. It is the poison in the paint protesting its removal. You rinse the cloth, wring it and scrub again, your face reflected in the wobbling mirror, a streaked and ghastly canvas. Patches of your own pale skin emerge from beneath the white, looking raw and vulnerable. The smell of the soap, harsh and alkaline, fights with the lingering floral perfume of the rouge. You keep scrubbing until the water in the bowl is a cloudy grey, studded with black flecks of coal. You splash your face with clean cold water from the jug. The burning subsides to a dull tenderness. You pat your skin dry with a thin towel. The face that looks back at you now is your own, but it looks exhausted, years older than the bright mask you wore. The eyes are weary, the skin blotchy. The performance is truly over. You sit on the edge of the bed, the springs creaking under your weight. From the pocket of your good dress, you retrieve the night's earnings. You pour the contents onto the thin blanket, a few sticky shillings and pence from your wage envelope, and then, separately, the other coins, the ones from the waiter's tray, the half-crown pressed into your palm, perhaps a little more. You line them up, your fingers sorting by value. You count them once, then twice, a silent litany. You subtract in your head. The rent, set aside in a small tin on the mantel, the coal money, the food for tomorrow, a penny for the bathhouse, a few pence towards a new pair of stockings for the ones you have amended in 2 places. You see what is left, the tiny surplus. It is never enough to feel secure, only enough to stave off immediate disaster for another few days. The coins are cold and small. They represent hours of smiling, of listening, of navigating danger and disgust. You sweep them into a small drawstring purse and place it under your pillow, a pathetic treasury. You blow out the lamp. In the sudden dark you lie down, the day's final calculations echoing in your mind alongside the ghost of music and shouted conversation. The room is cold. You pull the thin blankets up to your chin. Outside, a distant church bell tolls 3. Somewhere in the building a baby cries. You close your burning eyes and the city in all its grinding, glorious, cruel reality finally claims you for its own. Your body keeps its own ledger, and the entries are written in aches. in subtle changes, in whispers of failure that grow louder each season. The work does not just tire you, it redesigns you from the inside out. Start with your legs, those instruments of the dance. After years of hours spent standing, bouncing, kicking on hardwood, a new geography has begun to map itself beneath the skin of your calves. Delicate bluish lines, like the tributaries of some strange river, trace their way up from your ankles. They are varicose veins, the price of gravity and constant pressure. They throb with a dull heat at the end of a performance, a persistent reminder that the graceful line of your limb is built on a foundation of strained vessels. Your feet, squeezed into shoes that are never quite the right size, develop hard, painful corns and bunions. The ball of your foot feels permanently bruised. You learn to walk home with a slight rolling gait to minimize the pain, a walk that is nothing like the brisk, precise step of your stage entrance. Then there is the cage you wear, the corset. Its embrace is more than an hour of discomfort. It is a slow, permanent rearrangement. You have grown so accustomed to the shallow, high breaths it forces that a full, deep lungful of air feels strange, almost alarming. Your ribs are tender to the touch. Your stomach, perpetually compressed, rebels in small ways. Indigestion, a lack of appetite until you are almost faint. You hear stories, whispered warnings, of girls whose organs were displaced, who developed mysterious internal ailments, whose constant faintness was blamed on weak constitutions, when it was, in truth, the architecture of their own costumes slowly crushing them. The tight-lacing leaves red, angry creases in your skin that take hours to fade, a daily branding of your trade. Your back muscles forced to compensate for the unnatural posture, knot into cords of tension that no amount of rubbing can fully release. But the most insidious entries in the ledger are written on your very surface, your canvas. The makeup you apply each night is a slow poison. The ceruse, the white lead, does more than burn as you wash it off. Over time, it coarsens the texture of your skin. Fine lines appear earlier than they should, etched around your eyes and mouth from the constant drying and cracking of the paste. In the cold air, your cheeks and forehead feel tight, raw, prone to flaking. More alarmingly, you have seen the girls for whom the poison went deeper. Sores that appear at the hairline or the corners of the mouth and refuse to heal properly, leaving small, shiny scars. Hair that begins to thin, to lose its luster, falling out in greater handfuls when you brush it. There are whispers of worse, of tremors in the fingers, of sudden debilitating headaches, of a metallic taste that never leaves the mouth. You know these are the signs of lead sickness, and you watch for them in your own reflection with a quiet terror, knowing the very substance that creates your marketable face is also plotting its destruction. Hanging over all of this is the great, shapeless fear of the disease that seems to love your kind: consumption. The word is spoken in hushed tones. It is the ghost in the dressing room. You know its signature: cough, dry, hacking, relentless. And you listen for it in yourself and others with the attention of a sentry listening for the enemy. The halls are perfect breeding grounds, close, damp, air thick with shared breath and dust. When a girl develops a persistent cough, a pall falls over the company. First, it is practical. Can she perform? Will she infect the others? Then, as it lingers, turning waxy pale and punctuated by a frightening bloody handkerchief, it becomes a morbid spectacle. She is a walking lesson. Management will let her go, gently or not. Her savings, if she had any, evaporate into patent medicines, visits to dispensaries, bottles of cheap cod liver oil. The final, desperate resort for the pain and the sleepless cough is laudanum, the tincture of opium. It is cheap, available at any chemist, and offers a few hours of blissful numbness. You see girls become dependent on it, their eyes growing cloudy, their movements sluggish, trading one kind of ruin for another. The fear of the cough is not just a fear of death. It is a fear of the long, expensive, humiliating slide into it. A process that strips you of your beauty, your income, and your dignity long before it claims your life. Every tickle in your own throat is a potential death sentence, a threat to the fragile economic entity that is you. And underpinning every ache, every fear, is the most relentless pressure of all, the ticking clock. Your profession has a brutal, unspoken expiration date. Your value is indexed to youth and a specific kind of freshness. You're painfully aware of this. You study the older girls, the ones past 25. You see how subtly, then not so subtly, the opportunities dry up. The solo lines in the chorus are given to newer, younger faces. The invitations from the bar grow fewer. The gentleman preferring the bloom of a girl of 18. The stage manager's eye passes over you more quickly. You begin to see yourself as they see you, not as a person, but as a commodity with a shelf life. Is there a new line beside your mouth that the paint cannot fully hide? Has your energy, your bounce, lost a fraction of its spark? The anxiety is constant. What comes after? The options are a terrifying shorthand. You might descend to a lower-tier hall in a rougher part of town. You might try to become a dresser or a wardrobe mistress. If you're lucky and have cultivated a friend in management, you might marry if you can find a man who will overlook your past and your empty pockets. Or you might join the legion of faded, desperate women haunting the edges of the very world you now inhabit. Their painted faces a tragic mockery of the glamour they once sold. Your body is your capital, and it is a depreciating asset. Every night of work is a withdrawal from a finite reserve. You're living on borrowed time, spending your youth like coin, watching the pile diminish with each passing season, and praying that something, luck, a man's lasting favour, a miraculous inheritance, will appear before the last of it is gone and you are left with nothing but the ledger of your debts, and the ruins of the face that once, for a few shillings a night, made the world smile. The money order is a monthly ritual, performed with a mix of duty and deep, unspoken sadness. You stand at the post office counter, filling out the form with careful penmanship, sending a portion of your precarious earnings back to a family in a village or a provincial town. The address you write is a portal to a different world, one of simpler rhythms and harder judgments. You imagine the coins being converted into coal for the hearth, a new pair of boots for a younger brother, a joint of meat for a Sunday dinner. You send the money to ease your conscience and to maintain a thread, however frayed, of connection. But the letters you receive in return, if you receive any, are monuments to that distance. They are written in a careful, formal hand full of news about the weather and the neighbours, but they speak around you, not to you. Your name is mentioned with a kind of cautious vacancy. They thank you for the funds, of course, but they never ever ask about your work. Your life in London exists as a silent, shameful blank in the family narrative. You're the daughter who went into service or found position in the city, a euphemism everyone understands but no one acknowledges. You have become a useful ghost, a source of income whose true cost is too grim to examine. On the rare visits home, you feel it. The embrace from your mother is a second too long, trembling with unasked questions. Your father's eyes avoid yours. Siblings look at your clothes, your mannerisms, with a mixture of awe and suspicion. You have crossed an invisible line. You provide for them, but you can no longer belong to them. The very work that empowers you to help also exiles you from their respect. You love them, and you know, in a bitter corner of your heart, that your love is subsidizing their comfort with your disgrace. It is a loneliness that has roots, a homesickness for a home that no longer truly wants you as you are. In this isolated state, the heart seeks its own harbour, often in the very storm that surrounds you. Romances bloom in the cracks of this life, intense and fragile as glass flowers. They are with people who understand the hours, the exhaustion, the smell of grease paint and sawdust. A piano player with ink-stained fingers, a comic actor with a weary smile, a scene shifter with strong arms. There is a comfort in not having to explain. He knows why you're late, why your feet ache, why you sometimes have a distant look in your eye after a difficult patron. In the stolen moments, a shared cigarette in a draughty alley behind the hall, a walk along the embankment before rehearsals, a whispered conversation in the wings, it feels like a conspiracy of two against the world. But the world presses in. his wages are as uncertain as yours. The jealousy sparked by your necessary flirtations with customers is a constant, slow-burning ember. The dream of pooling your resources to rent a proper room together often shatters against the reality of a missed payment, a sudden layoff, a season of poor houses. The pressure turns gentle words into sharp ones. Promises of stability curdle into accusations. More often than not, the relationship ends not with drama, but with a slow fading, a missed meeting, a sense that you are two drowning people clutching at each other only to pull each other further under. It is a love born of shared siege, and it seldom survives the peace it dreams of. Then there are the relationships born not of shared struggle, but of transaction's shadow. A customer, a regular, begins to show a particular persistent interest. He's older, more established. He speaks of taking care of you, of saving you from this life. It is a powerful fantasy, a lifeline thrown from a steady ship. For a time, it can feel like rescue. There might be gifts, not just coins, a warm cloak, a bottle of proper scent, a paid-for week in a better room. But the power dynamic is absolute. You are the recipient, the grateful one. Your role shifts from entertainer to dependent. His affection is contingent on your availability, your charm, your continued adherence to his idea of you. The outside world's judgment now falls on you both, and he, protected by his gender and money, can often withdraw from it, leaving you to bear the full weight of the stigma alone. These arrangements are islands too, but islands with a single unpredictable king. You trade the chaos of the market for the silence of a gilded cage, and the loneliness within can be even more profound, for it comes with the knowledge that you have been purchased and can be replaced. And so, you build your own interior world, a secret chamber in your heart where you store dreams not of grandeur, but of quiet, impossible ordinariness. These are not the vague yearnings of a girl, but the specific, detailed blueprints of a woman who knows the price of everything. You dream of a small grocery shop in a quiet street. You can see it with perfect clarity. The bell over the door, the clean-scrubbed counter, the scales with their shiny brass bowls, the shelves stocked with jars of tea and biscuits and soap. You imagine the smell, coffee, spices, dry goods, a clean, honest smell. You picture yourself serving a neighbour, making correct change, being known as the respectable shopkeeper miss. It is a dream of autonomy, of a life built on tangible goods, not intangible charm. Or you dream of a man, not a gentleman, but a reliable man, a carpenter, a baker, a railway clerk, a man with calloused hands and a steady wage who comes home at a set hour smelling of wood shavings or fresh bread or ink. You dream of a tiny but clean house, perhaps with a small yard, of cooking a simple supper, of mending his shirts by a real fire, of a silence between you that is comfortable, not charged with performance or calculation. It is a dream of being valued for something beyond your smile, of a partnership that is a fortress against the world, not a transaction within it. Most poignantly, you dream of disappearance. Not a dramatic escape, but a gentle fading. To move to a suburb where the houses are small and identical, where no one knows your name or your face from the playbills. To become a woman in a plain dress, walking to market with a basket on her arm, nodding to other housewives, utterly anonymous. The dream is of being unremarkable, of shedding the exhausting burden of being looked at, assessed and priced every single day. These dreams are not frivolous, they are the scaffolding of your sanity. On the hardest nights, when your feet burn and your cheeks ache and a patron's hand has lingered too long, you close your eyes and walk the floor of your imaginary shop. Or you picture the pattern of a wallpaper in your quiet, unknown house. You hold these images close, polished smooth by countless repetitions. They are the proof that the you behind the paint and sequins still exists, a separate self with hopes that belong to her alone. They may be fantasies, but they are not lies. They're a different kind of truth, a declaration that your spirit has not yet been fully mortgaged to the night. They are the quiet, stubborn fire you keep burning in the deepest part of your emotional winter, a fire no landlord can tax and no stage manager can dim. The world outside the gaslit bubble of the hall and the bar has opinions about you, sharp and unyielding as flint. They reach you in fragments, like stones tossed from a great and furious distance. Most loudly they come from these social purity campaigners, the reformers, the earnest men and women who see in your glittering form the very root of society's decay. You're not a worker to them, not a person making difficult choices. You're a symbol, a symptom. In their tracts and their fiery speeches from temperance platforms, you're named the gateway to ruin. They argue that the music hall, with its painted women and suggestive songs, is a school for vice, luring young men away from wholesome pursuits and into the arms of dissipation and ultimately the workhouse. Your smile is not a professional tool, it is a lure. Your dance is not labour, it is an incitement. They speak of you with a furious abstract pity that feels more like hatred. They want to save you, but their method of salvation is to obliterate the world that employs you, to shut down the halls, to drive the trade into darker, more dangerous corners. When you hear of their rallies, their petitions to Parliament, a cold dread settles in your stomach. Their compassion offers no bread, no rent, no alternative. It offers only condemnation and the threat of taking away the precarious ledge you stand on, all in the name of cleaning a moral stain they believe you embody. You are the problem to be solved, and their solution is your erasure. Within the walls of your own workplace, you are viewed through a different, colder lens, that of capital. To the manager, the owner, you are a unit of production. Your value is quantified in your ability to fill a seat in the chorus without stumbling, to look pleasing under the lights, to encourage the sale of alcohol in the bar. You are a component like a gas jet or a length of painted scenery. He knows your name, but it is a label on an account. He is aware of which girls draw the most attention from the boxes, which ones have a following, and he allocates the slightly better costumes or the more prominent positions in the line accordingly. It is not favouritism, it is asset management. When you are ill, he calculates how long he can afford your absence before replacing you. When a newer, fresher face arrives from the provinces, he evaluates her against you. Your personal struggles, the sick mother, the debt to the chemist, are not his concern. They are variables that might affect your reliability and thus your utility. Your body's slow deterioration is an anticipated depreciation of his stock. He does not hate you. He does not even disapprove of you. He simply consumes you as the public does, and when you're spent, he will dispose of you without sentiment and acquire a new model. Your dreams, your fears, your delicate negotiations in the bar are invisible to him. He sees only the bottom line, and you are a line item upon it, your value fluctuating with your youth and your ability to draw coins from the pockets of men. You must find a man willing to marry you. He may be from the world of the halls himself, a musician, a comic, sharing your precarious footing, which makes the dream of stability together a gamble. More often, if he's from the respectable world, a shopkeeper, a skilled tradesman, your past becomes a ghost that must be meticulously exorcised. You must reinvent your history. You become a widow, a distant cousin taken in, a woman of vague but respectable employment. This foundational lie becomes the keystone of your new life. Every acquaintance, every neighbour is a potential threat. A chance encounter with an old patron, a whispered recognition by a former colleague on the street, could bring the entire fragile edifice crashing down. Your husband, if he discovers the truth he did not already guess, holds not just your heart but your entire social survival in his hands. Your past becomes an unspoken debt, a permanent vulnerability. Marriage is not an escape from the economy of exchange. It is a transfer of ownership, and the price is eternal vigilance and the burial of a significant part of your lived experience. For the many who find neither institutional rescue nor marital sanctuary, the path leads inexorably downward. It is a slow slide, almost imperceptible at first. A minor injury, a twisted ankle that doesn't heal properly, a persistent bronchial cough, costs you a week's work then too. The management, with its eye on the bottom line, replaces you. You find a position in a smaller, shabbier hall in a rougher part of the city. The pay is less, the patrons are coarser, the risks are higher. The invitations to the bar dry up. You're no longer a novelty. You sell the finer dress, then the good boots. You move to a cheaper, damper room. The paint on your face seems to crack more easily, to highlight rather than hide the weariness. A desperate, ill-advised affair with a man who promises much and delivers little might lead to a pregnancy, which is a professional death sentence. Without savings, a single serious illness completes the descent. You pawn what little you have left. The chorus lines of the minor halls no longer want you. You might try other forms of the trade, slipping further down the scale of visibility and remuneration, until you find yourself among the legion of women who walk the streets, not as an extension of a performance, but as the performance itself, stripped of all its glittering pretense. This is the shadow that follows every step, the unwritten conclusion to the ledger. It is not always a dramatic fall. It is more often a gradual fading, a diminishing of options until only the most desperate remain. You watch it happen to others, and you know in your bones that without a miraculous intervention, a legacy from a forgotten aunt, a lottery win, the unwavering loyalty of a man of substance, the gravitational pull of this decline is the natural law of your world. The future is not a landscape of possibilities, but a narrowing tunnel, and you are walking through it, trying to outpace the darkness that closes in from behind, measuring your remaining youth and health like a prisoner counting the days until a sentence is carried out. You see the possible futures etched in the faces of the women who share your dressing room, your stage, your fears. They are living prophecies. Take Elsie, who had a way of tilting her head that made the gentlemen in the boxes lean forward. She was pretty, but more than that, she was clever. She saved every extra shilling, wore her costumes until they were almost threadbare, and never touched gin. She caught the eye of a widowed chandler with a small but tidy shop in Clerkenwell. He was a plain, quiet man who came to the hall for the music, he said, and was charmed by her seeming modesty. She left the chorus 6 months after meeting him. The girls gave her a cheap locket as a farewell gift. You saw her once, years later, through the window of that shop. She was behind the counter, weighing out candles, her hair in a severe bun, a neat apron over her dress. She looked older, harder. She caught your eye through the glass, and for a fraction of a second the old, knowing look flashed there, a silent scream of recognition, before it was extinguished by a blank, polite smile meant for a stranger. She had escaped, but she lived in a prison of her own making, guarding her secret every waking moment, the locket from the girls buried deep in a drawer. Hers was the success story, and it tasted of ashes. Then there was Maggie, who sang the sad ballads with a tear that seemed genuine. She had the loveliest complexion, like a porcelain doll, until she didn't. The cough started as a tickle, a private joke between seasons. Then it became a dry, tearing sound she tried to smother in her sleeve between scenes. You shared a mirror with her as she applied more and more rouge to hide the pallor, the ceruse caking on the feverish skin. The money she had saved for a new winter cloak went instead to a bottle of syrup from a quack doctor. She missed a performance, then two. The stage manager sent a boy with half her weekly wage and a message not to return until she was well. You went to see her in the single room she shared with another girl. The air was thick with the smell of camphor and sickness. She was propped on pillows, a threadbare shawl around her shoulders, and when the cough took her, it was a violent rattling storm that left her gasping, a speck of bright crimson staining the cloth at her lips. Her eyes were wide with a terror deeper than any stage fright. She was not just afraid of death. She was terrified of the debt, the charity ward, the pauper's grave. Within the year she was gone. Her portrait, the one she'd taken in her best costume when she first arrived in London, smiling a brilliant, hopeful smile, was sold from a trunk for a few pence to settle a debt to the landlady. And there are those who simply vanish. Like Jenny, who was all sharp wit and sharper tongue, who mocked the gentlemen even as she took their money, who swore she'd never be owned by any man. One week she was there, complaining about the price of oysters. The next, her spot at the dressing table was empty. Inquiries were made, but half-heartedly. Perhaps she'd found a better situation up north, someone said. Perhaps she'd finally gone too far with the wrong patron, muttered another. Her few things disappeared from the shared lodging. No one came asking. In a city that swallowed thousands whole every year, the disappearance of a single chorus girl was not an event. It was an absorption. She became a story, a cautionary tale told in whispers, then a faint memory, and then nothing at all. Her laughter and her anger dissolved into the eternal London fog. These are the three graces of your world: the one who hides, the one who dies, the one who disappears. Their fates are not random tragedies. They are the limited, brutal options dictated by the arithmetic of your trade. Yet, to see yourself and your sisters solely as victims is to miss the terrifying, pioneering truth of your existence. You stand, though you often stumble, at a violent historical crossroads. You're among the first great army of modern women who have left the traditional domains of the household, the father's house, the husband's home, and entered the urban marketplace as independent economic agents. Your wage, however paltry and unstable, is yours. You sign a contract, you rent a room in your own name, you navigate a complex economy of tips and favours. You're a working woman in a sense your grandmother could scarcely have conceived. But you've arrived at the party a century too early. The city provides the economic opportunity, but the old moral order stands at the door with a cudgel, waiting to beat you for taking it. Your body, displayed not for a husband but for a paying public, becomes the battleground. The reformers, the journalists, the moralists, they're not just attacking your profession, they're unleashing a furious backlash against the very idea of a woman who owns her own labour and sexuality, who circulates in public space on her own terms, however constrained those terms may be. And then there are the newspapers, which paint you in the broad, garish strokes of public fantasy. You see them sometimes left on a table in the bar or sold by a boy on the corner. In them, you find caricatures of your own life. On one page, you might read a sensational story of a fallen songbird, a music hall girl who ended in the river or the infirmary, her tale a melodrama of seduction, betrayal, and inevitable destruction. It is written to provoke tears and clicks of the tongue from respectable housewives, a cautionary tale that uses a fictional version of your corpse to sell papers. You're a victim, but a faceless generic one, your complexity reduced to a plot device in a moral fable. On another page, in the gossip columns, you might find a very different portrait, a flippant paragraph about a romantic entanglement between a chorus beauty and a minor aristocrat, framed as a spicy tidbit, a bit of naughty fun. Here you're not tragic but trivial. Your life is a light entertainment, a dalliance. The grinding work, the economic calculus, the constant fear, all of it is airbrushed away, replaced by a wink and a nudge. Neither narrative bears any resemblance to your truth. You're not perpetually weeping, nor are you perpetually winking. You're tired. You're calculating the price of a new petticoat. You're nursing a blister. You're trying to remember if the gentleman from last Tuesday seemed the sort to become a regular. You're missing your sister's voice. The newspapers have no language for this mundane, grinding reality. They cannot sell papers with the story of a woman who is simply, doggedly, exhaustedly trying to survive. So they invent a you that is either a dire warning or a cheap thrill. You read these stories and feel a strange dislocation. You recognise the setting, the hall, the bar, the borrowed finery, but the character they describe is a stranger. This public phantom, this music hall girl, bears your shape but none of your weight. She has no aching feet, no ledger in her head, no quiet dreams of a grocery shop. She's a symbol for others to use, and in that, perhaps, is the cruelest echo of all. In the eyes of society, you are never truly present. To the reformer, you are a moral contaminant. To the manager, you're a renewable resource. To the newspaper, you're a sentimental trope or a risque anecdote. The actual woman, with her specific sorrows and her stubborn hopes, exists in the silent spaces between their definitions, in the unlit corridor between the stage and the street, in the quiet of a rented room at dawn, a real person haunting the edges of her own legend. For a very few, there appears a door marked not exit, but rescue. It is opened by the charitable societies, the Magdalene asylums, the well-meaning ladies of means who see in you a soul to be salvaged. Their offer is stark, complete surrender. You must leave the hall, the bar, your name, your past. You enter a regime of silence, prayer, and hard penitential labour. They will train you for domestic service, the endless back-breaking work of a laundry, or the rigid, invisible toil of a housemaid. In exchange, they promise moral cleansing and a reference that does not mention the stage. It is a lifeline, but one attached to a cage. You exchange the noisy, punishing freedom of the marketplace for the silent, punishing discipline of the institution. Your spirit, which learned to project defiance and charm, must be broken into meekness. Your body, accustomed to the specific aches of performance, is retooled for the different, deeper aches of scrubbing and kneeling. You are saved from one kind of ruin only to be processed into another, acceptable form of drudgery. And always there is the conditional nature of their charity. A moment of rebellion, a whispered complaint, a longing glance back at your old life, and the door can slam shut, leaving you more stranded than before. This path demands the annihilation of the self you have built, however precariously, and few have the strength, after years of fighting for a shred of autonomy, to willingly submit to such an absolute erasure. The most celebrated exit, the one that gleams like a prize in the imagination of every girl in the chorus, is marriage. It is the fairy tale ending, the societal seal of approval, the promise of a legal and emotional anchor. To become a wife is to graduate from being a public commodity to a private belonging. It offers the dream of that little house, that steady man, that quiet life. But for a woman from the halls, marriage is a transaction fraught with perilous fine print. First, you. Your pain is the friction generated by this colossal clash. Every judgmental stare on the walk home, every sermon condemning the halls, every newspaper article that reduces you to a symbol, is part of a culture war. You're on the front line. You may not think in these terms as you count your shillings or dodge a drunkard's hand, but by your mere presence, by your survival, you are challenging an ancient edifice. You're proof that women can, and will, live outside the traditional scripts of daughter, wife, and mother. Even if the new script they are given is a tawdry and dangerous one, you're helping to invent the modern working girl, with all her precarious freedoms and unique vulnerabilities. The path you are carving through the moral wilderness of the city is one that millions of women will later walk into offices, shops, and factories. They will inherit a slightly easier version of your struggle. They will face their own judgments, their own calculations between respectability and survival, but the ground you're breaking at great personal cost will make their journey marginally less impossible. You're not a heroine. You're a casualty and a pioneer all at once. The future is being written in the ledger of your debts and in the silent, stubborn fact of your continued presence in the glittering, unforgiving light. The grey dawn light, thin and watery, finds its way through the single-smeared window. It does not flood the room, it seeps, illuminating particles of dust that swirl in the stale air. The night is over. Its account settled for now. On the scarred surface of the dressing table, amid the pots of dried paint and the grimy cloth, lies a single coin. It is a shilling, received last night from the waiter's tray. In the flat morning light you can see it is worn smooth at the edges by countless anonymous hands. It is cool to the touch, a small metallic fact. This coin will not buy you dignity. It will not erase the memory of the hand that passed it, or the smile you had to manufacture in return. But it will buy a loaf of bread, a half pint of milk, a few lumps of coal to take the chill from the room. It represents the most fragile kind of power, the power to choose, for one more day, to continue. It is the distilled essence of the night's labour, a tiny, hard seed of survival. Beside it, draped over the back of the room's only chair, is the costume. In the gloom, it has lost its magic. The pink satin looks cheap and sad. The sequins are dull, a few threads hang loose where a stitch gave way. It hangs there empty, a discarded skin, a brightly coloured ghost of the creature that moved under the lights. It holds the shape of performance, but the life has left it. These two objects, the worn shilling and the hollowed costume, are the true monuments to the night. They speak of exchange, of a self bartered and a body spent, of a transaction now complete, leaving behind only these quiet mundane relics in the quiet mundane light of morning. Her story is not an antique curiosity, a bit of historical colour to be marvelled at from a safe distance. It is a foundational blueprint. She was among the first products of a new industrialised system for the packaging and sale of the female image. In her, we see the early brutal template for the commodification of the female gaze. The music hall manager who positioned her in the line, the choreographer who designed her kick, the gentleman who assessed her smile. They were all early pioneers in the science of extracting value from femininity as spectacle. The calculations are eerily familiar. The demand for a constant performative brightness, the relentless pressure to maintain a specific youthful appearance as capital, the precarious income stream based on attention and favour, the blurry, dangerous line between professional charm and personal availability. We have not left this market. We have globalised it, digitised it, and made it exponentially more efficient. Listen to the echoes. The online streamer, smiling brightly for hours into a camera, her income a volatile mix of micro-donations and sponsorships, her value tied to her ability to sustain a parasocial relationship with an unseen audience. The film star whose every red carpet appearance is dissected for flaws, whose age becomes a narrative of professional decline. The corporate mandate for a certain polished look, another form of uniform. The eternal exhausting negotiation women still navigate between being perceived as competent and being perceived as likeable, between ambition and approachability. The debate over where the professional self ends and the private self begins, a line she was forced to draw every night in the smoky air of the bar. Her nightly calculus, how much friendliness, how much distance, how much of the self to give to secure the next shilling, is the same calculus performed in 1,000 modern contexts, from the service industry to the upper echelons of professional life. The technology has changed. The platform has changed. But the core transaction, where a woman's perceived appeal is leveraged for economic survival or advancement, remains a pervasive, often unspoken, engine of our world. We have more choices, more safety nets, more vocabulary for our resistance. But the ghost of her bargain haunts the structure. She is the unacknowledged ancestor in a lineage of labour that asks for the person along with the work that pays in both coin and a piece of the soul. To remember her is not to indulge in historical pity. It is to recognise a pattern, to see the long shadow cast by the gaslight, and to understand that the freedoms we champion today were carved in part from the hard, unyielding stone of her constrained and courageous life. Look at her, not as a fossil but as a mirror. Her wants were not complex. A job that did not barter her spirit, a key to a door that locked safely from the inside, a touch that was not a down payment. These are not Victorian desires, they are human ones. They echo in every apartment lease signed with anxiety, in every performance review that feels like an appraisal of the soul, in every calculated smile offered to placate a superior's ego. We've rewritten the contract, yes. Our choices are broader, our protections thicker on paper, but the ghost in her story does not ask about choices, it asks about architecture. Has the fundamental marketplace changed? The one where visibility is still so often currency, where a woman's value in public space is still subtly or not tied to her alignment with a gaze that is not her own? We have dismantled the music hall, but we've built vast digital stages. We've banned the lead paint, but we've invented new exacting standards for the canvas. We speak of empowerment, but the old negotiation, trading aspects of the self for security, modulating presence for profit, persists in 1,000 modern dialects. Her night is not an archaic tragedy. It is the raw, early draft of a story still being written by anyone who has ever walked into a room, physical or virtual, and known deep down that part of the admission price is their own image, carefully prepared for consumption. She is the prelude to a song of survival that has never truly ended, only changed its key. Now, let the last hissing ring of the gas mantle fade into silence. Let the final, stubborn grains of rice powder be brushed from the table. Let the ghost of cheap perfume and cheaper wine lift from the air. She turns, a silhouette against the grey window, and steps out into the London morning. The fog receives her, as it receives all things, the soot, the noise, the hope, the exhaustion. There will be no statue for her in the city square, no plaque on the wall of the vanished hall. Her name is written in water on ledger sheets long since burned for fuel, but for these hours we have stood in the wings of her life. We have seen the calculation behind the smile, the fatigue beneath the finery, the stubborn flame of a dream in a rented room. To see is to acknowledge, and acknowledgement, however belated, however distant, is a form of dignity. It is a small, quiet stone laid against the vast forgetting. Thank you for walking this path through the dark. Wherever you are, whatever your own performance demands of you tonight, may you find, in the silence that follows, a space that is wholly and unnegotiable your own. Good night.